What do we mean by natural forms? For the purpose of this video, let's say that it means plants, animals, fungi, minerals, maybe bacteria. We're not going to talk about natural habitats or environments like rainforests or rivers, although you could say that an animal is a habitat where loads of bacteria live in. There might be some problems with our terms, with our definitions. Is the hand a natural form? If a rock's a natural form, what about a pile of rocks? What about a puddle? Is that a natural form? Well, let's just ignore all those problems and keep going, because this video is supposed to be about art. So, human beings are natural forms, and we like to make art about natural forms. We do, really like it. Across all times and places where there are humans, there's some kind of art inspired by natural forms. But what actually is art, though? Nobody agrees on this, I'm sorry about that. Anyway, 29,000 years ago, people in Australia were already going into caves and using pigments to make images of kangaroos. These were people who didn't do farming, didn't have metals, but for some reason they did feel it was important to picture the animals that they lived among. They're actually showing the heart and the lungs of the animals in those images made all that time ago. We don't know all the reasons why these ancient people were doing that. Was it a spiritual thing? Was it scientific? Was it just a way to decorate the caves? Were they creating an identity for their group? Or all of those things at once? Well, let's rush through these four ideas really fast, too fast probably, to explore the way human beings have made visual art about natural forms. So, human beings don't just use natural forms to make houses or eat natural forms for lunch, we worship them. In ancient India, people would have these snake spirits in their houses, and today there are still these Naga statues in temples in South India being blessed by ordinary people with milk and turmeric. In Japan there are similar kind of temples for fox spirits. In Britain, before the English came and messed things up, people were worshipping oak trees. Art and religion, therefore, have been pretty much mixed up for most of human history. And if we think about these people who are in today's Burkina Faso, making these costumes out of leaves and stems for rituals, would you call that art? Would you call that religion? Would you just call that everyday life? The Cuban-American artist Ana Mendieta covered herself in rocks, flowers, made silhouettes of her body in the earth. She definitely called that art, but it feels like a spiritual practice as well in a way. The British artist Andy Goldsworthy creates these very fragile forms from nature, like carefully making an archway out of ice or a rainbow out of autumn leaves. And then within a day, these artworks are gone. Just like natural forms, which grow and decay and grow again. On the other hand, these bowerbirds are kind of doing the same thing as Andy Goldsworthy. And would we say they're making spiritual art, or are they just decorating their nests? Human art around the world is always decorating or ornamenting using natural forms. Now, here's a Hindu temple covered with animal carvings. Here's someone making a Persian carpet. Here's a medieval French tapestry with a unicorn on it. Here is a wallpaper by the 19th century socialist William Morris. And here's Kehinde Wiley using these same traditions for a more kind of political purpose, glorifying his everyday black American subjects with all this richness and detail of flowers and fruit and leaves. Art can also be tangled up with the idea of studying natural forms. Leonardo da Vinci, famous for this and sometimes confused with this guy, spent a lot of his time trying to work out how rocks fitted together in a mountain or seeing how veins were similar to rivers. For him, art and science weren't so separate. There was a long tradition in the Greek or Arabic-speaking world of artists painting plants for the purpose of spreading scientific, medical knowledge, but that's really where the tradition of realistic painted natural forms comes from, which then later turned into something Europeans would call art, like this still life painting by Juan Sanchez Cotan. And art that was also a scientific record didn't only exist in Europe. Ustad Mansur was making works like this for the Mughal Emperor in Delhi at a similar time. Today there are hundreds of artists working in a way that combines scientific research with creating artistic experiences in galleries or museums. Sometimes that means performing the role of the mad scientist, like, what if I create sculptures for crabs to make their homes in? Or what if I create a building which opens and closes its windows according to the multiplication of cancer cells? Or what if we created an embassy for communicating with dolphins? Well, what if? Going back to the making of those masks based on plants or animals, we could definitely call this religious if we want, but it also kind of creates a culture. The masks that those Bois people make, they're owned by extended families, so they're worn and performed at important moments of the year like weddings and funerals. They're about your inclusion in the community as well as what marks your family out as different from the others. Don't we also use natural forms in this way? Like wearing leopard print on a night out? We might forget that that's a natural form. Or turning to the inspiration of natural forms as part of these strange rituals called fashion. Aztec nobility might have worn these snake-formed golden lip piercings, which showed everyone that their speech was to be taken seriously. The use of animal symbols like this was kind of what made the Aztecs Aztecs. And a later Mexican artist like Frida Kahlo is still thinking about that kind of cultural identity through using her symbols of snakes, birds, monkeys. When the Caribbean British artist Veronica Ryan was asked to make a public sculpture for Hackney celebrating the Windrush generation, she chose to make monumental bronze versions of 3 fruits that were native to the Caribbean. These might look like abstract natural forms, but they're also a feeling of home or belonging among all the supermarkets and buses and public buildings of Hackney. And then sometimes there are works that use natural forms in new ways that are kind of hard to define. An artist like Anthea Hamilton here is using pumpkins as, well, don't know really. In fact, there are millions of different ways that art and natural forms can come together. Maybe forget what I said about those 4 categories, the spiritual, the decorative, the scientific, the cultural, because some other art historian would have come up with totally different categories. And this other art historian might also say, hey, why did you leave out all those Chinese traditions of flower and fruit and bird paintings? And what about artists like Matisse or Cézanne or Gauguin? And how about native northwestern coast totem poles? I mean, in fact, you've left out so much, it wasn't really even worth trying to give this broad picture of art about natural forms across time and space. It would have been better to just focus on one thing and tell a story about it that people could remember, instead of skipping around so much and confusing everyone. Well, that imaginary art historian might be right. So I challenge you guys. Tell a story about an artwork that you find beautiful, weird, or terrible. Make it memorable. Remember that most stories of art are yet to be told.